Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Tom.
Hey, it's our TOEIC unit. If you haven't had to find your own apartment yet in your life, you will one day. And here are some really good phrases to pick up, to learn, especially if you're living in a country where their main language is English. This will be helpful.
It will indeed. And, of course, last time we had a couple apartments for rent there as a sample, as for advertisements there. But today we've got actually a conversation between a landlady or landlord and two potential what do you call them? Renters, I guess? Residents?
Tenants.
Tenants, that's the better word there. And indeed, they're talking with the landlady and they're discussing the apartment and stuff like that. So that's what their conversation is all about in today's lesson. So, hey, let's get to it. We're checking out an apartment in today's lesson. Let's listen to Joyce and Francine and Mike and their conversation.
So now that you've seen the apartment, do you have any questions for me?
Yes, I believe we have a few. For starters, how much is the security deposit?
The security deposit is 2 months' rent, which is pretty standard in Taiwan.
How about the utilities? Are they included in the monthly rent?
The water bill is covered, but the electricity bill would be separate. The cost is between 5 NT dollars and 5.5 NT dollars per kilowatt hour. I'll have to double-check for the exact amount, though.
Okay, that's not a major issue. Now, we are considering purchasing a car. Is there a parking spot available?
There is limited parking available in the underground garage. Each apartment can reserve one parking space, but there's a 2,000 NT dollar monthly charge.
I see.
I think this is one of the better deals on the market right now. It has a big kitchen, and it's extremely quiet, which I know is crucial to you. Furthermore, the building finished construction only 2 years ago, and its foundations are strong. That makes a huge difference in safety when it comes to earthquakes.
It does check a lot of the boxes for us.
I don't expect it to stay on the market for very long. If you like, I can arrange a meeting to sign the contract.
I think we need to think about it for a day or two. Would that be okay?
Certainly. Here's my business card. Give me a call after you have made your decision.
Okay, everybody, let's get to it. Let's talk about the contents of today's lesson. Again, we're having a discussion here amongst Joyce, Francine, and Mike, okay? So Joyce is the landlady, Francine and Mike are the potential tenants here. They look like they're a married couple looking for their first apartment here. So Joyce has shown them the apartment, and Joyce has a question. So now that you've seen the apartment, do you have any questions for me? So I've already showed you the apartment, and I've given you a tour. Now it's your turn to ask me some questions.
Yeah, so Francine has one. She has a few, actually, and she uses this phrase for starters. For starters, how much is the security deposit? We'll often use that, just to start out a new topic of discussion. For starters, maybe you have several problems or several things you want to discuss. So you want to go in order, or maybe you just want to discuss one at a time. For starters is a phrase you can use to begin that conversation. So for starters, how much is the security deposit? I found that the security deposit, for the most part in Taiwan, is 2 months of rent paid in advance. A deposit here is just a determined amount of money that you pay in advance before you rent something, just in case you destroy something. They don't have to try to get the money out of you after you've actually done some damage to an apartment or even a hotel room. Sometimes there's a security deposit on that too. But it's some money that you pay that you can get back when you return something unharmed or in good condition. I've had some landlords in the past, not in Taiwan, but in New York, try not to give my deposit back to me because they came up with these things that I'd hurt the apartment or something. But there is such a thing as wear and tear, where just living in a place year after year, you're going to have some damage. That's just natural. So hopefully all of you out there get your security deposits back.
Indeed, and if you are a landlord renting to somebody, you have to protect yourself in case somebody leaves the place a big mess. They destroy it, they leave it a disaster area. So, of course, you need to have this security deposit. Deposit can also be used to describe money that you put in the bank. I'm going to make a deposit today. I'm going to put some money in the bank. And nowadays, that may not be such a wise choice because interest is so low at banks these days. Maybe you should put your money someplace else. But in any case here, that's what Francine wants to know. The security deposit, the amount of the security deposit. And Joyce says, well, the security deposit is 2 months' rent, which is pretty standard in Taiwan. A lot of times I've heard this described as the first and the last month's rent, which is basically 2 months' rent.
Yeah, I've heard that as well. So then Mike has a question. How about the utilities? Utilities include water, gas, electricity. Those are your utilities. And he wants to know if the utilities, or how much the utilities will cost each month, are included in the monthly rent. Some landlords like to do that. They'll pick up all the utilities and pay for them themselves instead of the tenant having to pay them. And then others want you to pay all the utilities. My first landlord here in Taiwan wanted to pay my utilities, and then I realized that they were watching how much I spent or used, and I told them immediately after that. I said, I want to pay my own utilities. I don't live with a mother and father watching what I do. So, yeah, sometimes it's included in your rent, and other times utilities are separate.
Indeed, and as you said, they include gas or water or electricity. I remember in college, I had a landlord that included cable TV as part of the rent, although I don't think people watch cable TV so much anymore, but we all use the internet, and I don't know if internet service would be considered a utility or not. I wouldn't if I were the landlord. I would just consider utilities gas, water, and electricity, but in any case, here, that's Mike's question. How about those utilities? Are they included? And Joyce, the landlady, says the water bill is covered. I will pay the water bill, but the electricity bill would be separate. Electricity, of course, is referring to electric power. And yes, indeed, you have to pay that bill yourself, although you don't need to pay the water bill. Utilities in Taiwan are pretty cheap here, so I guess landlords and landladies have different reasons for charging for utilities or not. But in any case here, yeah, you guys got to pay the electricity, but I'll pay for the water.
Right. So Joyce says the water bill is covered. But electricity can be high. Sometimes it depends on the usage. And that's what I had a problem with my landlord. They wanted my electricity bill to be lower. But I like air conditioning. So the cost is between 5 NT dollars and 5.5 NT dollars per kilowatt hour. I was telling Tom, I've never had anyone respond to me with this sort of rate. If I asked about the utility bills and specifically wanted to know what electricity was going to cost, I would want someone to say, well, each month it's around 100 NT or 300 NT or whatever. I wouldn't know about kilowatt hours, so I would encourage you landlords out there not to give somebody this rate. But a kilowatt hour is just a way to measure the amount produced by 1 kilowatt in 1 hour. That's what that means. But like I said, I have no idea what that means. I would just want someone to say, it's around 1,000 a month, like that. So Joyce says she'll have to double check for the exact amount, though. Francine says that's not a big deal. It's not a major issue. But they're thinking about getting a car as a new couple, and they want to know if parking is available. Is there a parking spot? Sometimes we'll say a parking place, a parking spot. That's usually located under the building or sometimes out on the street, but more often than not, it's under the building here in Taiwan.
Right. So that is a big consideration if you want to rent an apartment. Where are you going to park your car?
Good luck.
Most people would like to have a car. You might be able to find a parking lot in your neighborhood where they charge you, what, 5,000 NT dollars, 10,000 NT dollars per month. It depends on where you live. It's always nice to have a parking space in the building you live in. It's very convenient, especially if it's a rainy day. You just take the elevator down to the basement level and drive out, and you don't have to bring an umbrella with you, especially if you drive to your place of work, and that's another building that has an underground parking lot. So, yes, indeed, a parking lot in the building would be nice. And, of course, if there isn't one, well, hopefully there's one in the neighborhood, or there's off-street parking, or there's parking on the street, but, it's available. You don't have to compete for it and stuff like that. So here's what Joyce has to say. There is limited parking available in the underground garage. There might be a waiting list, actually, so everybody in the apartment building probably would like to have a space too, so you probably have to wait in line for an available space. But if you do get one, if you can reserve one, then it will cost 2,000 NT dollars per month.
I think in my building, it's 3,000 a month. And we have a lot of people that don't live in the building that actually rent a parking space in my building.
Good way to make money,
yeah. It's a convenient place. So Joyce says, I think this is one of the better deals on the market. If something's on the market, it's out there ready to be rented or sold by whoever's offering it. It's got a big kitchen. That's always a good plus. It's extremely quiet. And she mentions that it's crucial to this couple to be in a quiet place. Crucial just means really important, essential, something they can't do without. You could say that vitamins are crucial for maintaining good health. Exercise is crucial. Well, they would like to find a place that's quiet.
Indeed. And this is a big problem for people who like quiet because I've heard this so often from people that they have noisy neighbors, not just here in Taiwan, but all over the place. People play their stereo really loud. They're singing karaoke at 2 o'clock in the morning. Or I think you've often complained about the old man who lives upstairs.
Yeah, he stomps around very loudly.
Yeah, he gets up at like 3 or 4 in the morning and starts walking around. Boom, boom, boom. Hey, some of us got to sleep down here. What are you doing up there? So indeed, Joyce reassures them that this is extremely quiet and that's crucial for them. Crucial is very, very important. It is key. It's necessary. Probably because maybe they're going to have a baby or something and they don't want the baby woken up in the middle of the night. Or they work at home and they need peace and quiet in order to concentrate on their work.
Could be. And also, Joyce says furthermore, or in addition to all of that, the building finished construction only 2 years ago. Ooh, it's a new building. I love new buildings. And she says the foundation on that building is strong. The foundation is that really basement type floor or ground. When they build the foundation, we'll always talk about them pouring the foundation for a building. When you pour a foundation, you're putting the concrete down, and that foundation's going to hold that building up forever. So it's nice that it's new. They probably have planned for earthquakes, and so maybe it's earthquake-proof, whereas some of the old buildings in town aren't quite as strong. And she says that makes a huge difference in safety when it comes to earthquakes. Oh boy, does it. I feel like my building's really good at swaying, moving back and forth when we get the earthquakes. We've had a lot of little ones lately. We just had one yesterday, I noticed. As I was sitting at my desk, I went, ooh, you have to be quiet and be not moving. For some of them, they're so tiny. But yeah, the foundation of a building is usually made of stone or concrete, something that's very strong that supports the building from underneath.
So if you have a strong foundation, that does make a huge difference in safety when it comes to earthquakes. So to make a difference, of course, means it's crucial, it's vital, it has a lot to do with something that makes a difference. Sometimes when you're having an argument with somebody and they mention something, well, you know what you did 6 months ago, you can say, that doesn't make a difference. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about. But here, having a good foundation does make a difference. It makes a huge difference if we're talking about earthquakes. So when it comes to just means when we're talking about something or if we are considering that topic. Like, for example, like I say, when it comes to mathematics, Jeff is an expert.
I wanted to mention with this makes a difference. You can use it to mean it doesn't matter to me, I don't care. So maybe a friend goes, hey, when do you want to leave? You could say it makes no difference. It makes no difference, or it makes no difference to me. It doesn't matter to me. I don't care. Or the weather didn't make any difference in our plans. It wasn't able to affect or change your plans. It wasn't important. So to make a difference means it can cause a change or it's important in some way. So if you say it makes no difference or it doesn't make any difference to me, then it's not important to you. So we use it quite often. You'll hear it in conversations, I'm sure. So Francine's pretty happy with this particular apartment. It checks a lot of boxes for them. If something checks a box or ticks a lot of boxes, the British like to say ticks the box. It ticks the boxes for us, which just means it's satisfying to us in a lot of different areas. So it's kind of nice if you can find an apartment that checks a lot of boxes for you, meaning it has lots of things that you were hoping to find.
You've got a list of things you want, like parking, quiet, utilities, stuff like that. So they're all little boxes on a list. So yes, if you can check all those boxes, hey, it's perfect for you. There are no problems there. And Joyce says, I don't expect it to stay on the market for very long. If you like, I can arrange a meeting to sign the contract. So yes, indeed, there are other people looking to rent this place. Mike says, I think we need to think about it for a day or two. We need to have a discussion amongst ourselves about this apartment. Should we rent this one, or should we keep on looking, or should we rent the one we looked at yesterday? And Mike says, would that be okay? Can you give us a couple of days to decide?
Yeah, so that's usually what happens. If you live in New York City, you don't get a day to decide. If you don't decide right then on the spot, that apartment's gone. So it might get that way in Taiwan sometimes too, especially in Taipei, when people are looking for kind of a similar type of apartment where it's not too expensive, it's not too cheap. It's hard to find just exactly what you want. So if you find something good, I wouldn't delay. I would probably take it. She is a realtor. She's someone who walks around and shows other people these apartments that are available. So she gives them her business card and says to give her a call when they've made a decision. We hope that they find exactly what they're looking for. Right now, though, we're going to listen to our Chinese teacher, and then we'll be back.
听众朋友大家好，我们昨天带大家看了2个租屋的这个说明，租屋的广告说明。那今天我们来看看，如果今天真的是去找一个房间、套房，或者是找一个公寓的话，到底要问哪些问题，要注意什么样的重点呢？我们今天的课程设计刚好是带大家看一段对话，所以应该会蛮有贴近的感受哦。不过主角到底有谁呢？有 Joyce， 她应该是房屋的这个中介。那么另外呢，就是 Francine， 还有 Mike， 他们是一起去看房子的。好，那么所以呢 ，Joyce 当然带他们看过公寓之后呢，就直接问问看他们有没有什么样的问题。不过第一个 Joyce， 她的一开头讲的是 Now that。Now that 其实可以框起来，这个 Now that 其实就指的是既然表示原因，既然有这样子的一个状况，既然你们因为都已经看过 apartment 了，它是一个连接词，有没有什么问题呢？好，当然会有一些问题，像 Francine 他就讲说我有一些问题啦。这里的 Francine 第一个 Francine 的第一句尾看到的是 a few，在这里是代名词，指的是 a few questions。 好，所以第一个重点就是我们知道租屋都是要先押个保证金，这个保证金就出现在第一个 Francine 的第2句话最后面 security deposit。 这个保证金到底是多少呢？其实我们大家有租过房子的人都知道，在台湾大概就是2个月的房租，所以 Joyce 这个时候就回答他基本上就是 2-month rent, which is pretty standard in Taiwan。 在第2个 Joyce 这句话逗点之后，我们也看到补充说明的关系子句，先行词是2个月的租金 2 months rent， 那么逗点之后 which 到句尾补充说明，这2个月在台湾算蛮标准的。 好，不过 Mike 这个时候呢，他就提出了蛮重要的这个一个问题，在第一个 Mike 第一句话最后面，我们看到一个 the utilities，utility 就是一些公共设施。那我月租不管是2万、2万2、2万5，它有包含这些所谓的公共设施吗？比如说水费、水电费之类的。所以 Joyce 这个时候就回答了第3个 Joyce 的第一句，我们看到个关键叫做 The water bill is covered。cover 覆盖，所以月租有没有 cover 到水费账单呢？水费账单水是有包括，但是电费就没有了。所以后来讲到的这个电费 the electricity bill 这个电费呢是不包含在里面的。那你就要看1瓦多少钱咯。好，那当然电费自付啦，因为这个电费有用跟没用是差很多，并不是一个主要的问题。好，另外还有一个就是说有没有停车位啊？基本上停车位一定没有包含在这个房子，不管是套房还是公寓里面，但是附近有没有一个 parking spot 呢？第2个 Francine 的第2句就针对这个 parking spot 来特别提出。好，所以停车位的话呢，还好，公寓呢可以预留一个地下室的停车位，可是还是要付租金啦。那第4个 Joyce 就是回答这样的问题。我们看一下第4个 Joyce 第2句的地方，这个动词的 reserve 特别把它圈出来。reserve 指的是留着我待会来用的概念，所以你会留着什么待会来用呢？比如说我们要去餐厅吃饭之前，我们是不是要 make a reservation reserve a table， 这个时候是留着我待会就去用。所以我刚刚也有提到一个常用的另外的名词搭配 make a reservation， 这个所谓的预定保留的名词 reservation reservation， 所以你也可以保留一个房间哦，我等一下就来住，我下个月就去住 make a reservation， 你就打电话到 hotel 或者是网站上去预约一个这个 hotel。那这个动词呢就要特别注意，因为它蛮常用的。好，那么接下来呢我们就提到啦，这个以上的很多的问题 Joyce 其实也说明的蛮清楚的。不过呢 Joyce 还有特别说啦，其实在这个物件当中有厨房，而且也非常安静，所以呢其实对于 Francine 跟 Mike 来说是非常重要的。第5个 Joyce 的第2句我们特别来看一下，逗点之后有一个which，当然你很敏感，你知道这一定是也有一个关系子句啦，然后有逗点，那就是补充说明的嘛。可是这里的which小心哦，先行词不是前面这个 quiet 形容词，这里的which它代替的是从句首 it 一直到逗点整句话的意思。也就是说这个物件有大厨房又非常安静，那这样的状况which 我知道对你们来说是很关键很重要的。好，所以呢当提到另外一个这个议题的时候，比如说呢当提到地震的时候，其实这个建筑物啊它的地基又很坚固，所以符合对方有很多的需求。好，那么 Joyce 呢还有特别提到，当然如果大家喜欢的话就可以来签一下合约咯。最重要的是租屋一定要把文字的部分写清楚，在第6个 Joyce 最后面我们可以把 sign the contract 特别画起来。好，这是租屋要签合约，用动词 sign the contract。 好，希望这2天的多益单元对你的生活知识是有帮助的哦。我是安娜，我们下次见。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Okay, everybody, welcome back. We've got some useful expressions here. In the conversation, of course, we had some expressions that had to do with recommendations. Or a recommendation. If you have some information that you have or you know about something and the other person doesn't, then you can give them a recommendation. So here's the first one. It says, I'd suggest renting an apartment that's close to your office. That's my recommendation. You can make a suggestion. I'd suggest. Or you could even just say, I suggest. That's what I think you should do.
Yeah, they're both correct. I would suggest is what this contraction is. I'd suggest renting an apartment. You could also say, I suggest you rent an apartment, which is the subjunctive verb tense, which is kind of confusing to you guys, but you need to learn it. There are certain verbs that you have to learn that tense, and suggest and recommend are both in that category. Advise is as well. You'll use it a lot in business. Moving on to the next one, I recommend you leave a small deposit today if you're interested in this apartment. I recommend, you could also add a that. I recommend that you do this. So these are all really important phrases that you will come to use more and more. I wouldn't advise. Again, advise is one of those subjunctive tense verbs. It's very tricky. So I wouldn't advise living in this section of town because it's too noisy. Sometimes it's really good to get recommendations from people who've lived in that city for a while to know what area you should be looking in at all.
Yeah, it looks like a nice building. It looks like it's quiet during the day, but at night it's chaotic. There are about 5 or 6 rock bands practicing in the adjacent apartments there, and there are drug deals going on all night long.
Yeah.
So, of course, it's going to be really noisy there. So, yes, I wouldn't advise living in this section of the town. That is my advice. Okay, let's move on now to our discussion question for today.
Okay.
And it is, what are some other questions you should ask an agent before renting an apartment?
Wow. Other questions. Well, I would find out more if it's an agent you're working with and not the landlord. I would ask the agent more questions about the landlord. Sometimes your apartment becomes a hassle or something where you're not happy because your landlord is crazy. So sometimes it's good to find out in advance, if you can, more about the landlord himself or herself. What about you, Tom? Have you ever dealt with an agent before, a realtor?
Not really, but it's always been by word of mouth. You know,
Oh, really?
I know of somebody who's renting an apartment. Why don't you go talk to Mrs. Tsai or something like that? But I would probably ask if it's okay to have pets. You know, is it a good place to have children in?
Can I paint?
Yeah, can I paint the place? Can I sort of do some things to it? Can we maybe tear down a wall or something like
wow.
that? Can I install a jacuzzi in there or a sauna or something like that? That, of course, would probably not be recommended. But yeah, this is probably something you'd need to ask about. I would also want to know the general characteristics of the tenants in the building. Are they retired people, you know, who are going to be quiet, or are they young families with loud and snotty kids and stuff like that? Or are there a lot of dogs in the building? Dogs can bark and keep you up at night.
Oh, we had a big dog in my building here for a long time. But all of the tenants got together and said, you got to get rid of that dog. Yeah, the dog was a huge dog and the apartments are small. It was so unhappy. So that person finally moved. Yay.
They didn't have to shoot the dog. Huh?
No. It wasn't the dog's fault. The dog wanted a yard to run around in.
Poor puppy.
Yeah. Well, that is some of the discussion we've had. Continue talking about this. This is a great unit to practice your English speaking skills on because these are practical skills you'll all need one day.
Okay, that brings us to the end of our lesson for today. Good luck for all of you in renting an apartment if you need to do that. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.